Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a good day. Wonderful sunny day today. Today, I want to talk to you a little bit about the relationship between thoughts and consciousness. Of course, this subject was pioneered long time ago, but by scholars and specifically by Mr. Krishnamurti, who started teaching this and these understandings since 1920s, 1920 something. And I find myself a student of his teachings, which I find on the internet and so on. And plus my own experiences in life and understanding and analytic look at this and ability to ponder and come up with ways to understand it better. I would like to offer a certain kind of a perspective and explanation today for you, and perhaps you would also enjoy and add to it in your own way. So we want to discuss about the relationship between thoughts and consciousness. Well, for that, I guess we should first try to examine what is this business of thinking, which encompasses and influences, is based on or directs all our activities, what we do on different levels, social levels, religious levels, political levels, economic levels, relationship level. Everything that we do is based on thoughts, shorted along. And thoughts is basically part of emotions, sentiment, recognition of action, sentiments, emotions. That's what thought is basically, but we'll get into it a little bit more in detail. But let's also touch on what consciousness is. And consciousness is accumulation of all information through history, genetic information, sorrows, happinesses, reasons for them, concerns, dogmas, sadness, anxieties, concerns. All the other information, whether through personal experience or any other way that you could stumble on them and get to know that information. Many of them just come genetically through generations of experiences. It comes to you, and many of them through all your readings or all ways that the information was transferred to you, or you went after it. Reading, watching movies, events, stuff that you analyze and you accept them, you allow them to become part of your information, collective information, and memory, and forms your consciousness and encompasses the field that your mind operates in. In other words, it's like consciousness, being conscious of, ability to understand, ability to analyze, to be aware of, which is based on what I just mentioned, talked about right now. So let's say, let's talk about for a second again about detail of thoughts, how it's born, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the connection of these two. Well, if we consider when man was created, born, or however, when we were born, or let's just go millions of years back and think about, first man or woman. They knew nothing. They were like just body, physic, like a computer with no programming, no understanding. So in many years like that, then imagine then this physical being, let's say walking, experienced things, like walked and stumbled on a rock and fell down, and that gave him a certain experience, and from that, or maybe, I don't know, they took the apple and ate it and said, well, I shouldn't have eaten that one. I don't know. But from that experience, the certain knowledge, from all that experience that happened, things happened to him, experienced, certain knowledge came about. And from that knowledge, experience, knowledge came about of it. That all that knowledge was stored in his memory, became memory. So experience became knowledge and stored as memory. And from that memory, reaction to that memory, thought was born. So whatever we think, it comes from our memory. Whether these memories are based on personal experiences that brought the knowledge and became into our memory, or based on things that we saw in a movie or heard or read, or somebody assumed, and news or whatever. Somehow we became aware of it and became part of knowledge and became part of memory. So, and then from that thought, you said, experience, knowledge came memory. From that memory came thought, and from that thought, new action. Action comes, and from that action, new experience, and from that new experience, knowledge, and that knowledge again becomes part of the memory, and from that memory, then more possibility and ability and things for new thoughts, and then again, from that thought, action, experience, knowledge, and memory, and again, thoughts and action, so on and so forth. It continues. That's how the memory develops, and thoughts constantly happen. And to me, you can possibly, try to consider, how can thought eventually stop and all that. We'll touch on that later before I forget what I wanted to say. So that's how thought is operating, and consciousness is, as we talked about, is accumulation of all these information, whether personally we collected or somehow it was available, and somehow it got into become part of our knowledge available to us, which became our collectively our consciousness. Now let's see if we can make it a little bit more understanding as far as more closer to home. Let's think about a library, a big library, city library or whatever library that you like, and so many floors and so many places in the library, and so many books, thousands and hundreds of thousands of books. Now all these books, some of them have come through your own personal property, like it's your book, you placed it there, and many of them came as the result of you having seen it somewhere, or read it, or noticed it, or became aware of its content, and then somehow it was also deposited in that library. So that library has collective of books coming from all over the places, but somehow you got to know of them, whether it's through, movie, reading, circle of friends, bigger circle of friends, old stories, history, geography, whatever. Somehow you got a hold of it, and you got a permission or authorization to come into this library, and it's now deposited. There are thousands, hundreds, thousands of books there. That, perhaps we can see, that's our consciousness, the collective of all that was accepted to be allowed to be in that library. How our life was affected. That kind of experience all was deposited in that library. So that became sort of, let's say, our consciousness. And our thoughts would be each one of those individual books that is a thought, subject of thought, which it has its own details and so on inside the book, which it can be further analyzed or experienced or used or read or whatever. So if we can think of it that way, then we can see the relationship between thought and consciousness. Now, so this relationship, they're affecting each other. So it's let's say the consciousness is a field where mind operates, or thought operates, or somehow. So there is a close relationship with consciousness and thought. And sometimes they say, how could this relationship come to an end? Well, I personally think so far that this relationship or end of thought is not really possible. it is only when we die, because I think thoughts are like heartbeats. Heart is the first thing that apparently starts, it's created and starts functioning, beating when we are conceived. The fetus is conceived. The first thing, the burst of electricity, and the heart beats. And it beats as long as we're alive. If it doesn't beat, we're dead. And I think thought is the same. The only way you can stop thought is the one dies. So if there is yes, you can bring and decrease the ripples of thoughts by meditation and understanding how to decrease the ripples of thought. Just like if there's an ocean, a choppy ocean, lots of waves, which brings unstable and maybe not calmness, opposite of calmness, but then that is how our mind is affected all through the day possibly. But then we need to have a way, different ways, sports, meditation, reading books, whatever it is that brings your mind, that ocean, from choppiness to very small ripples and soft smoothness, which brings more of an ability to reflect things better, because the smoother surface, the more reflection, the clearer reflection will happen in there, and more calmness will come, more security and more depth and more confidence, and so on and so forth. So it's very important to know how to bring these levels of continuous activity in mind by way of meditation into a calm state and decreasing its ripples and its activities. But it can never become zero, because when thought stops, that means we don't exist. So it's good to know through sports and through other ways to relax, and through meditation to relax and learn how to decrease the ripples of minds. But we should always know that it's good that we are able to think. That means we're alive, like our heart beats, so we're good and healthy. So thoughts are good, just that there are different kinds of thoughts, and we should understand what are these thoughts, and so we wouldn't be alarmed by it. We have an understanding of it, because so there's thoughts, there's consciousness, and then there's, of course, there's another thing which we'll talk about in a different session, which is called transient thoughts. There are different kinds of thoughts. A flash of thoughts, for example, is different than transient thoughts, but they're both positive, because geniuses in the world have had these flash of thoughts or transient thoughts, and it depends on how you get to use them and to for what you want to do, and how to understand what they are. For example, Nikola Tesla had lots of thoughts that came to him, and one of his inventions was through that flash of thoughts. So they say burst of genius, and many of us could have it. And transient thoughts, it's also a notion of your ability for detail. But then we got to understand some of these transient thoughts, for many of my young friends or old friends, are obnoxious, disgusting, whatever, or all kind of different things. But you just don't have to be alarmed, because it doesn't mean anything that has anything to do with who you are, what you are. It's just thoughts which we'll discuss about what they are and how they're formed in a different setting, which you will be pleased to know that is very normal and nothing of importance at all. Now, coming back to the thought and the conscious thought, ending it, is that this whole different library, the library that we have, which we discussed it to be our consciousness, is the reason why our relationships are challenging sometimes with two people. Because the kind of books that we have in our library could be different than the kind of books that the other person, our girlfriend, has in her library. And that's why the level of thoughts, the books that she opens, the thoughts that she goes through, and the thoughts that we go through could come from different backgrounds, because the library, the consciousness, has different books and different topics that was forming the collective of field that is mind and thoughts are operating. And that's what this consciousness is one of the reasons that creates division between you and me, and you and your significant others. So considering this and its effect on the relationships, then you would understand that when there are differences in your relationship, or there are differences in opinion and understanding of life and approach to life between you and your significant others, it's not an abnormal thing. It's just giving you an opportunity to exchange books so you can read her books from her library, and she can read the books, your thoughts, from your library, and then possibly then you can have a certain kind of interaction about that and come to some common grounds and understanding. That's basically was my purpose for sharing this with you, and hope that I'll give you some information to ponder and be able to understand your own mind better. And next time we'll talk about that other kind of thinking and so on, which I'm sure you'll find it interesting and informing. Have a nice day, and hope to talk to you soon.